the previous Gemara, we spoke about the fact that there is a bracha that should be recited on going to the mikvah for certain scenarios. A ger says a bracha, and it seems in the time of the Gemara that Balkari would say a bracha. And the Gemara had mentioned that when it comes to those scenarios, the bracha is not recited initially, but it's recited after the mikvah. And normally, when it comes to a mitzvah, you're supposed to recite the bracha first and then do the mitzvah. And here we find that the mitzvah is done first and then the bracha is done. So Rashi said the case was talking about a Balkari. Tosfos said it's talking about a ger, but the Tosfos then connects this with the mitzvah of washing one's hands, seemingly for a meal. And Tosfos says you find a similar thing, that we don't recite a bracha before we wash our hands. We recite our bracha after we wash our hands. And Tosfos says, you know why? Because if you wash your hands after you go to the bathroom, you can't recite the bracha before you wash your hands. Therefore, in that scenario, you have to say the bracha after you wash your hands, because it would be inappropriate to say the bracha with dirty hands. And therefore, once that became sort of like a situation where you need to do it that way, always, when it comes to washing hands, we always do it that way. We wash our hands first and recite the bracha later. Tosfos says this is what we find by dunking, by tefillah in a mikvah, that because a ger has to say the bracha after going to the mikvah, so the same thing would apply to all the mikvah dunks, that a person who's obligated to go to the mikvah, he would recite the bracha afterwards. And of course, this applied in the time when we had kudshim, when we had holy foods, and then we would go to the mikvah, and there would be a bracha that would be recited. And women actually recite a bracha when they go to mikvah. But the Tosfos over here emphasizes this idea that really brachas, in theory, they should be recited before the mitzvah is done. But here we have two examples of where it's done afterwards. I just wanted to mention that there is the same thing applies to the laws of Shabbos. And I did mention this, but there's an interesting Magen Avram that talks about it. He says that he brings from the Shulchan Aruch that the Ramah says, some say you should say the bracha before you light, and some say you should say the bracha after you light. And the Magen Avram says, because if you say the bracha first, you will have accepted Shabbos with the bracha and you won't be able to light. So the Magen Avram says that the mother of the Drisha, one of the other rabbis, said, aha, well, according to that, on Yom Tov, we should really recite the bracha first before we light, right? Sounds good, because Yom Tov, you should recite the bracha and afterwards you light. And he brings from the Drisha in the name of his mother. But then he says, but that's not the way to do it. And the Magen Avram argues on it. So logic, according to the Drisha's mother, thought that you should really, for Yom Tov, should be different. Why would Yom Tov be different? Yom Tov should be different because Yom Tov is the mitzvah of course, of lighting candles is just like Shabbos, but the prohibition of lighting a fire doesn't apply on Yom Tov if you use a pre-existing fire. So if you use a pre-existing flame on Yom Tov, theoretically, what's wrong with saying the bracha first and then lighting? Yeah. Oh, you accepted Yom Tov already? Okay, no problem. You accepted Yom Tov. No problem. You're allowed to use a pre-existing flame after you accepted Yom Tov and light the candles. So this would seemingly be a way of doing the bracha properly. But Tosfos concludes, and he brings from a Tosfos in Psachim, which I believe is similar to our Tosfos, that says that once the rabbis established the tradition of reciting a bracha afterwards, it became like a blanket thing. So because on Shabbos we say the bracha after the lighting the candles, on Yom Tov as well we say the bracha after lighting the candles. So this is an interesting discussion over here, because logically you would think that maybe could differentiate between Shabbos and Yom Tov, and in fact, seems like the mother of the Drisha used to do that. And it's interesting to find women brought in Shulchan Aruch in the commentaries. But here, this is a Magen Avram in the chapter 263. He brings from a statement that is written in the back of the Drisha in the name of his mother. And now I will tell you that the Dogol Mervava on the side over here says La'nias daiti hadin im imai. He says, in my humble opinion, the commentary on the side over here, the Dogol Mervava, he says that he feels that the halacha should follow that way, that you should really differentiate between that on Yom Tov you should say the bracha first and afterwards light. And he says you could differentiate between that Tosfos and Psachim, that over there it's talking about in the Tilas Yodayim, because of after a bathroom. Here, and he's talking about the being toivel, the tefillah of a ger, that he says the brachas are all the same. But when it comes to Shabbos, it's a different nusach of the bracha. The nusach, the text of the bracha is different. The bracha of Neres Shabbos and the bracha of Neres Yom Tov. And Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbos Kodesh is one bracha. Not Lahadlik Ner Shel Yom Tov is a different bracha. So here, maybe you should say that you could say maybe there's a difference. So then he says maybe the Magen Avram felt that all the berachos had luck is the same, but then he says, what about Ner Chanukah? You should also recite the bracha after. If all had luckis are the same, he says, then if all lightings are the same, then Chanukah also you should say the bracha after you light. So it gets a little complicated over here. Anyway, the bottom line is, as far as I know, at least from my understanding, all the women recite the bracha after recite the bracha after they light. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, aren't there women who, after they, like when they're lighting the candles, like before it's fully caught, they put their hands over their eyes and then they take it off and then make the bracha. So it's like they're resting it for the.
They're not benefiting, from the light, right. So the question is, do you need to do that on Yom Tov, or should you just say the bracha before? That's the question. Maybe Yom Tov should be different. So that is a discussion here, and it seems to be based on this Tosfos, because our Tosfos mentions this idea that the rabbis made like these set, just blanket rules. Once you do it this way for a certain scenario, it's done that way across the board. And so the bracha of Shabbos candles is across the board, even Yom Tov candles. The bracha of Tevilah, it's across the board. The bracha of Tevilah's ger is across the board, even for regular toiveling and so on. Anyway, that's interesting to note, connected to this Gemara. Yes,
Rabbi, what about situations where Shabbos and Yom Tov occur concurrently? I think the uniform ultimate choice is to not chas v'sholem be mechal al Shabbos by losing track of is it Yom Tov or is it Shabbos?
Yeah, what you're saying is a very, very interesting point, and I'll tell you why. The Dogel Mervava says that it would seem that Yom Tov should be different than Shabbos because it's two separate brachas. And if it was the same bracha, fine, but it's two different brachas, and therefore you could say the blanket rule is all about Shabbos brachas, but not about Yom Tov. But you are saying no. The Yom Tov also sometimes has Shabbos bracha with it, and because of that, sometimes Shabbos falls on Yom Tov. Yom Tov falls on Shabbos, and therefore those times you're not going to be able to. It's going to be you could call it a Yom Tov lighting of the candles, and you're not going to be able to recite the bracha beforehand because then you'll have accepted Shabbos, and then you can't light. And therefore, because of those times, we could make a blanket rule about all Yom Tov lightings that they have to be done prior to the lighting has to be done prior to the bracha. So what you're saying is sort of answering the Noideb Yehuda's question. So you're saying a very brilliant point that could answer the question that the Dogel Mavava has on the Magen Avraham. Did you follow what I said, Yisrael?
Yes.
Yeah. So very good point. Very good point.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Okay, so we're going to continue here. We're almost finished the chapter. So let's see. What did we do yesterday? We spoke about we spoke a little about this aspargus. There's some type of a drink that was either made with beer or made with wine, and let's see, the Gemara dealt with, is it good for what parts of the body is it good for, what's it not good for, and it depends really if it's the one made with the beer or one made with the wine. And then we said there are 6 things said about this asparagus, and one of them was that you're not supposed to drink it only if it's undiluted. And we'll have to talk a little about that because we learned earlier that undiluted wine is undrinkable. And here we're saying that the way to drink it is if it's undiluted. So we'll have to discuss that. The Gemara will deal with that soon. But the other thing it mentions is that you're supposed to drink it, a full cup of it, or the cup should be filled with it. You hold it, you receive it in your right hand, you drink it when it's in your left hand. You don't speak afterwards. You shouldn't interrupt. You should drink it all in one shot, and you return the cup back to the person who gave it to you. And you also, you're supposed to spit afterwards, and you're supposed to eat something which the drink was made from. So if it was made out of beer, it seems like you should be drinking whatever the beer was made out of. If it was made out of dates, you should drink dates. If you're made out of figs, you drink the fig, you eat figs. And then the Brisa asked, but we do have a place where it says that you're supposed to eat bread afterwards, not something that it's made from. And the Gemara answered that if you drank a asparagus that's made from or made with wine, so you would eat bread afterwards. But if it's made out of beer, then you would eat the dates or the figs or whatever it was made from. You'd eat that afterwards. And then the Gemara said that we have 2 brises. One says it's good for la'at and bad for Ramat, and the other one says it's good for Ramat. It's bad for La'at. La'at and Ramat is an acronym. They stand for different parts of the body. And the Gemara answered that the difference is if it's made out of beer or made out of wine. And then the Gemara said that you're supposed to spit afterwards, or it uses different terminology. It says if you spit afterwards, one brisa says if you spit afterwards, you get stricken with some type of a sickness, and the other brisa says if you didn't spit afterwards, you get stricken with some type of sickness. So which one is it? Are you supposed to spit out afterwards, or in other words, the saliva that comes into your mouth, are you supposed to spit it out after you drink this asparagus? So the conclusion was there's a difference. It depends if it's made out of the beer or it's made out of the wine. If it's made out of the wine, you're not supposed to spit out afterwards. Made out of the beer, there you should spit out afterwards. And then Rav Ashi said you should even spit out in front of a king. And that was surprising, because the reason why that was surprising is because this is you don't spit in front of a king, but it seems that it's so dangerous. And we're talking about issues of these are demon issues. They could have a terrible effect on one's life. Who knows what could happen. So basically, stay away from any of these things. And then the Gemara spoke about Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha.
Rabbi, are you drinking asparagus in front of a king? I'm saying you're sounding like, obviously, if you're doing it in front of a king, I guess it's okay to spit in front of a king.
I was thinking of it. You drank it in your house. You walked outside, and the king is walking by. But I guess your example makes it sound a lot more practical, right? Okay, Isaac's interpretation. I think the practicality sounds a lot better. So thank you, Isaac. Yes. So the point is that if you're in the king's palace and he's serving asparagus, and of course he's spitting afterwards because that's what you're supposed to do. The question is, should you spit? Because on the one hand, is a health reason, but on the other hand, health reasons. I mean, from against demonic.
I think the Gemara is just telling us how dangerous it is to keep in your mouth.
Right, but it actually is saying practically.
Even if you were in front of a king, you'd have to spit it out.
Spit it out, and that would mean practically. If you're there, you don't feel obligated to swallow your saliva. You should spit it out. It's that dangerous. In that scenario, it makes more sense that the king is not going to chop off your head, because he knows, asparagus is has this danger to it.
I don't think it's reality. I don't think they ever envisioned anyone really in front of a king. They're just telling you how could they tell you how dangerous it is to keep in your mouth? I think the best way to tell you how dangerous it is even if you were standing in front of a king, you have to spit it out.
Isaac, you're contradicting yourself. The first, you made it so practical, and now you're jumping to just say that no, if you want to use the practical claim, that's fine, that's great. You want to jump and explain it the other way, then then you give it
what I'm saying is,
what I'm telling you. What you're saying is two separate interpretations. The first interpretation is different than the way I explained it, but I think it's very nice and very practical. The second way is following the earlier way, and that is that the Gemara is saying more of in theory how dangerous it is. So it's not normal that that's gonna happen, that you're gonna be walking in front of a king, but theoretically you would need to spit it out.
Exactly.
Hope he doesn't chop off your head. But okay, anyway, very nice. So you have two interpretations over here. Then the Gemara continued about Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. And Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha says that there's three things that Suriel Sar Hapnim. I mentioned yesterday about stories about Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha and his holiness and his greatness. And I mentioned also that there is brought in Seder Adoros about he was born with such holiness. His mother went to mikvah like 10 times because she kept seeing something impure until she finally saw an angel, and then she and it's actually brought in Shulchan Aruch that if a person goes to mikvah and they see something that's impure afterwards, they should go to mikvah a second time. That's why there's you're supposed to see a yid afterwards. You should look at a yid, see a yid after a woman goes to mikvah. They should see something pure. They should see a yid afterwards, because if they were to see something impure, like an animal or a guy, there is an inyan to go dunk again, and that's connected to this story of Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha's mother. And anyway, she went to mikvah 10 times until she finally was able to leave the mikvah, and the first thing she saw was this angel, and then she knew, this was a good. And sure enough, that night she became pregnant with Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, and he was one of the Asara Haruge Malchus, one of the 10 of the martyrs that we read about on Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, now when he was I don't know how old he was, but at a certain point in his life, he wanted to learn Torah from the Sar HaTorah. So he asked his Rebbe, how do I reach the Sar HaTorah? So his Rebbe told him, if you fast for 40 days, then you could reach the Sar HaTorah. So he did, and he was able, and he reached levels where he was able to go, and he was like able to enter the heavenly realms. Anyway, so he had relationships with these different angels. He was the Kohen Gadol. So he did go into the Holy of Holies, but it says he saw a certain angel, Kasriel. Here it talks about he saw this Suriel. So he definitely has, some type of relationships with the angels. Sounds like he can enter whenever he has a free entrance up there. So anyway, 3 things: the Suriel Sar Hapnim, the interior minister of Hashem, told him 3 things, and one of them was, don't take your garment in the morning from the shamish and put it on. Rather, you should put it on.
Take it yourself.
Take it yourself. Now,
Rabbi, what's the reason for that? Did they give a reason somewhere?
No, this is Kabbalistic stuff that, he needed an angel to tell him not to do it. So it's like, we don't really understand these things, except that in the Zohar, it does bring down that it has to do with the fact that the person didn't wash Negelvasser. You shouldn't take it from the person who didn't wash Negelvasser, but that's not the way it's brought in Shulchan Aruch. In Shulchan Aruch, it's brought. The Pri Megadim brings it. Vushei Srod brings it. That you don't, so it seems that it's even if he did wash Negelvasser, not like the Zohar seems to explain it. And then the next statement is that don't have someone who didn't wash their hands in the morning wash your hands, and that's based on a pasuk. And we learned this yesterday. Turns out that it's in yesterday's Chumash, that v'hiza hatahar al hatame, that the tahar person is supposed to sprinkle on the tamei person the afer, the ashes, the purification water, the para, the may para, the may nida, the water of purification from impurity, from the tumas mace. So we learn from there that a tahar person is the one who pours on the tamei person, and that's talking about, of course, sprinkling. But the same thing would apply in the morning. Washing your hands for natilas yadayim would apply. That you should have someone who already washed their hands, what we call negelvasser. They should they should be the ones to wash others. So, for example, if you're holding your baby, if a woman is holding her baby in the morning, she wants to wash negavaser, she wants to wash the baby negavaser, which is customary for women to do, they should really wash themselves, put the baby down first, wash themselves first, and then wash the baby. And that's based on a pasuk. The question is, does that only apply in the morning, or would that apply to netilas yadayim for a meal?
Rabbi.
Yes.
So I can understand the mother washing the baby, based upon your pasuk. But the first person.
Just one second. I'm gonna mute other people here. Yeah, say it again.
I understand where the mother washes the baby based upon the pasuk that you said that the one who's tahor. So who then does the mother?
She does it. She washes herself. Or someone else who washed their hands negavaser to wash her.
Yeah, but then who starts the entire process? Because
he washes himself. The first person washes himself or never went to sleep. A person can. What do you mean? A person can't wash their own negavaser?
No.
I wash my own negavaser. I don't have anyone washing my negavaser for me. But that's the norm.
So based upon the pasuk, how can you, who's tamei, make yourself tahor? You understand my question?
Yeah. The only thing is you're learning very literally the verse. It seems to be more of a hint from that verse. It's not exactly a halacha that we're learning from it. It seems to be more of a hint. I mean, if it was like a halacha, he wouldn't need an angel to tell him this. You know what I mean? It's a clear verse in the Torah. It's more of a it seems to be more like a hint. It's based. You see it in that pasuk, this idea, but it's not exactly any rule from that. So how can you wash your own negavaser? You do. That's it. How do you go to mikvah? You dunk yourself in the mikvah and you become tahor. You wash your hands and become tahor. When it comes to tumas meis, you have someone else. Someone else has to sprinkle. Someone else sprinkles upon you the Avar Apara. Now, what you're asking, I guess, is how exact is that pasuk in the sense of does it mean it that if, let's say, you're the only person around and you have the para aduma sprinkling mixture, are you allowed to sprinkle yourself? That's a good question, and I think that's what you're really asking. Because the pasuk says the tahar person sprinkles on the tummy person. Would a person be allowed, let's say there's no one around, would they be allowed to sprinkle on themselves the para aduma, right? That's a good question, Ezra. I guess we have to learn para, and that's one of the harder tractates, I'll tell you that. We'll have to look it up. Let me see what the law of para aduma is. But yeah, you have an interesting point. The pasuk does seem to imply like the tahar person should wash the tamei person, but again, it doesn't seem to be an exact limud from there. It's more of a hint. So the next, it says it in the Zohar. It's like based on a Zohar that says he's atar al tamei. It's not exactly a teaching that's a halachic teaching. Now there is a question if this would apply to washing before a meal, which would have practical application. Sometimes you have someone in your house that, let's say, they're handicapped or something, and you have to bring them water to wash. So, should it be done by someone who washed their hands already or not? According to the Taz, this actually law should apply there as well. That you should really have someone who washed for bread. They should be the one to wash this other person. It's not the accepted custom, I'll tell you that straight out. And I don't think the Mishnah Brura paskins that way. The Mishnah Brura, I think says that other netilas, other washings, you don't have to worry. It's only for the morning negelwasser. But the Taz does seem to have this chumrah that even if you're washing for bread, you should have someone who washed already wash others. Okay, now this doesn't apply to bring the water to the person. You're allowed to bring someone who didn't wash, they could bring you the water. The Magen Avram says this clearly, but to actually wash, the washing should be done by someone who washed negelwasser. Now, that's also an interesting point because really you're not supposed to walk 4 amos without washing negelwasser. So there are leniencies, but the official rule is you really should have negelwasser by your bed before you go to sleep, and this way when you wake up you wash right away the negelwasser, and it's not like you're walking anywhere to wash. But if someone let's say you have a non-Jewish worker or a Jewish worker who's not religious, and so they're bringing you negelwasser, but they didn't wash themselves, that's not a problem. The problem is if they pour the water over your hands and they didn't wash themselves, that would be an issue. And that's what one of the points that Suriel Sar Hapnim told Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. And then another thing that he told him, and this is the reason why it's brought here, is for this reason, it says that you should not return the cup of asparagus to anyone but to the person who gave it to you. And the reason for all these, again, it's not really a logic. It's because of you could get damaged from one of these groups of angels. They wait. This group of angels wait for a person and tell him, and they say, when is someone gonna fall into this trap, and he'll get captured by us. Okay, so then the next Gemara is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and that's where we are up to.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yeah.
So Tachsefit, what does it mean exactly?
It's a group of angels. One of them is called Tachsefis, and the other one is called Istalganis. And one of those groups could be waiting for a person who transgresses one of these things. And we are lucky that Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha decided to share with us this inside information about what to be careful from.
Angels.
So the group of they are not regular angels. These are angels of destruction. These are destructive.
Right. Angels of affliction, as it's stated in this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are going to continue with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is, let's see. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It's there are medium-sized lines on this page of 51A, and we are on the seventh line down of the medium-sized lines on 51A. Somewhere, I would say it's about probably halfway through the page, 51A. So if you're using an art scroll, it'll probably be somewhere around page 3, 51A3. Just guessing. Now, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Shloisha Dvarim Sachli Malach Hamavis. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said 3 things the angel of death told me. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi also seems to have, we know that he would speak to Eliyahu Hanavi. There are stories about that. Here he's speaking to the angel of death. Now, not many people are comfortable talking to the angel of death, but here we have Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is speaking to the angel of death. And the angel of death somehow revealed to him 3 things. One is Al Tito Chalukcha Shachris Miyad Hashamash V'Tilbash. One is similar to what actually the first 2 are similar to the to statements of Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha that he heard from Suriel. The first one is don't take your garment from the shamish, v'tilbash, and put it on. Rather, you should take it yourself. The second thing is don't have your hands washed from someone who did not wash their hands. And the third thing is don't stand in front of the women when they return from a funeral. And there are women that go to be part of the group that escorts the deceased and participate in the eulogies, and then they return. You should not stand in front of them when they return. Mipnei sha'ani meraki, and the reason is because I am dancing. Meraki tovah lefneihen, I am dancing and come before them at that moment, and the v'charbi biyadi, and I have my sword in my hand. V'yeshli reshus l'chabel, and I have permission to cause destruction. So this is quite important to know that there is the angel of death. At certain times he has permission to destroy, and these three things are three of the times that we know that he is standing right there. You don't see him, but he could be standing right there and could do his destruction if someone falls into this trap. Now, why only when the women return? It is the angel of death there dancing around when the women return from the funeral. And the reason is because the women brought death to the world. And with the story of Adam and Eve, that Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, and she got Adam to eat from the tree of knowledge. And therefore, the Satan is able to dance, hang around, do his thing when the women come back from a moment of anger. In other words, a funeral is considered like a moment of anger, and that would be a time when Hashem is angry because the fact that someone died and someone's getting buried, and this is considered. This is how this is why the women, the angel of death is there when the women return. Now there is another point that's made, and is that women are also constitute the element. A man is chesed, a woman is gevura or din. So women symbolize the idea of judgment, and that's why the angel of death is there near the women, because that's because they symbolize that the concept of strict judgment. Some husbands find out about that. And this supposedly is brought in the Arizal, that the reason why the snake decided to take advantage of Eve instead of Adam. Why did that he spoke to Eve? Because she is the concept of judgment, and he's attached to Baal, to people. The angel of death, Satan, is connected to it connects with strict judgment. So that's why so these are two explanations of why the angel of death is there, and the person should be careful not to stand there near them. There is a concept of making sure by a funeral to separate the men and the women, and this definitely would seem to fit right in with that. That's you shouldn't have people hanging around the others hanging around the women, because the angel of death is right there. Now, there's also seems to be some custom that women don't go to funerals. Brought in the Ben Yehoyada that women have a custom not to go to funerals. I'm familiar with such a minhag that they don't go to the Beis HaChaim, they don't go to the cemetery if they're pregnant. But it seems that there might have been other minhagim that the women didn't go to funerals because of this, because of this law. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with any such minhagim. Now the Gemara continues and says, "Now what do you do? The ipaga. What happens if you come and happen to be there when the women are returning from the funeral? What do you do? My takante. What should you do that the malach hamaves won't take advantage of you and eat you for lunch? Linshoif miduchte. Person should jump from his place and." Linshoif miduchte arba amais. Jump from his place 4 amais away, 8 feet. Iika nahara liabre. And if there's a river, you should go over the river. So the river will separate between you and the women. Iika darka achmin. If there's another path, take the other path. Lazelba. Go in that path. Iika guda. And if there's no other path, but there's a fence, Leiko achira, you should stand behind the fence. So basically, separate yourself from the women. And the Eloi, if there's no fence, lihader ape, should turn your face, velema, and say, the Yomer Hashem el hasatan. Hashem told Satan, Yigar Hashem b'cha, the Gomer. You should say this verse from Zechariah that Hashem should be angry at you, Satan, and ad cholfi minei, until the women go away. So that's the way of saving yourself from the hand of the angel of death. Now, it is brought down here in connection with what we said. How do these things help? So, we said that the women are gvura, or the angel of death is able to have an effect because the Ben Yehoyada explains. He says that the path, if you go over the river is a symbol of chesed, kindness, and water. The river is water. Water is considered chesed, and therefore the water would separate between the angel of death and you. So that would be, in other words, we mentioned that there's chesed and gvura, there's kindness and severity, and women are symbolized the severity, and the angel of death attaches himself to severity. So if you go beyond the river, you will be away from him. He won't be able to attach to you because there's that river of chesed, which water symbolizes kindness, and it'll separate between you and the angel.
Rabbi?
Yes.
How do you know that these women are coming back from the dead?
You're walking right by the funeral.
Oh, that's a funeral.
Yeah.
But they're coming back.
They're returning.
The funeral is over.
Right, they're returning right at the end of the funeral. So you see them all coming. You stay away.
Coming from where? From a cemetery? Or?
Yeah, let's say you go to a cemetery. You see a funeral just ended. Yeah. So make sure to stay away from the women.
Yeah, that's the only time that you would know is if they're by the cemetery.
Right.
Okay,
that's
so
what it's referring to.
No other time.
Yeah. No, that's it. I mean, there might be other times we're not aware of it. Rabbi Shua ben Levi says he found out 3 secrets. So maybe there's more secrets we don't know about. You know what I mean? there might be more things that would be nice to find out, but the angel of death revealed them to Rabbi Shua ben Levi, 3 of them. So that's basically the 3 that we know of. So the other thing is that what's so special about this verse? So the verse has 18 words. The verse has 18 words, and therefore it has the term chai. And so you're saying a pasuk, and it has chai in it. It also mentions Hashem being angry at Satan twice. One is against the hand of the angel of death, and one is against the sword of the angel of death. So bottom line is that this pasuk is helpful against the angel of death. Okay, and now the Gemara jumps to a discussion about a kois shel bracha. When you bench, there is a concept of having a kois, a cup with wine. And we all do this on Pesach night. Even if you don't have a mezumin, you hold a 3rd cup of wine for the benching. We do it on Pesach night. There is a concept of, even if you don't have a mezumin, 3 people, that you would hold a cup of wine for benching. But some say you should do that even biyachid, even if you're alone. And some say you do it with 3 people. But if you have if you're not 3 people, 3 men, you don't do the cup. And some say that even 3 people, you don't need it. But of course, it is considered a mitzvah min hamufar. So this cup is called a kois shel bracha, a cup of blessing. Now, the Gemara says, Amar Reb Zera. Reb Zera says, and some say it was learned in a brisa. Asara dvarim nemru b'kois shel bracha. There are 10 things that are said about a kois shel bracha, about this cup. Now, I should mention that it's brought that the Rambam holds that this applies to Kiddush, and it's also considered kois shel bracha. And so these laws would apply there as well. Rashi says here that Rashi says kois shel bracha means berchas hamazon. So Rashi says we're specifically talking about the berchas hamazon cup. And the Gemara tells us that there are 10 things about this kois shel bracha. One of them is to'un hadacha v'shtifa. It needs to be washed with water. Hadacha means inside, have to be washed out. And shtifa means outside. The Gemara will explain that, but I'm just sharing with you the difference between shtifa and hadacha. It has to be washed on its inside, the inside of the cup and outside the cup. And the purpose is so that it should be clean. Now, interestingly enough, Tosfos says that this only applies if it's dirty. If it is clean, you don't need this. But anyway, the 10 things, so it has to be washed inside and outside. The 3rd thing is it has to be chai. The cup of wine should be undiluted wine. Now that sounds very surprising, contradictory. And I mentioned we're going to be discussing it because this seems to contradict the Gemara earlier, which said we don't even know if you can say gafen on wine that's undiluted. It's definitely not mitzvah min hamuvchar. It's definitely not considered. Even the rabbis say you could say a bracha on it. That's not the ideal. And the Gemara, to the extent the Gemara is even surprised, you could do that. What's the reason of the rabbis? How could you even consider it wine? It's not really drinkable. So it is surprising that you would recite that it's considered important to have it chai. So in order to answer this question, the truth is Tosfos asked it earlier. Tosfos asked it on the previous page. He said, what does this mean that you would, that the rabbis admit on page 50b, he says, What does it mean? The rabbis admit to Rebbe Eliezer that the Koshel Bracha, that you need to put water, you need to add water into it. So because of it has to be mitzvah min hamuvchar. And so the question is, what do you mean? Later on, the Gemara says that it needs to be chai. So he says that you should pour it into the cup undiluted, and then you dilute it while it's in the cup already. That's one answer of Taisus. Another answer of Taisus is that you shouldn't use leftover wine and just use it for your kaishal bracha. You should use new wine from the barrel. And that's what it means, chai. Chai means new and not wine that was hanging around that someone poured already out and you found a little extra wine. That's not what you should use for a kaishal bracha. You should use new wine from the barrel. Now, another interpretation of what does it mean chai says it should be which we translated as undiluted. The text says no. It means that the cup should be chai. It should be considered a complete cup. It shouldn't have any blemish in the cup. The cup itself should be complete, and they find similar terms used for complete. Well, it uses the word chai for something complete, and it shouldn't be broken. And if it's broken, then that cup shouldn't be used for koshel brachos. That's what it means chai. Now, Reb Moshe Feinstein has a whole discussion if you're allowed to use a plastic cup for kiddush, and for Benjamin, it's called a kais. He says it's well, he doesn't say plastic. He says a disposable. So he wanted to say that you can't use it for it's not a kais. It's broken. It's considered disgusting. It's like broken, similar to falls into the category. It's not chai. But all the other rabbis seem to argue with him. A lot of other rabbis seem to argue, and then there is a thought that maybe he was referring to one of those paper cups that they make, those small bathroom cups that are like made out of paper. So those are the flimsiest of flimsy that you hardly can finish drinking before the cup is already dripping a little. But then there's a plastic cup is a whole. Some plastic cups are actually very fancy, and nowadays they even make bechers out of plastic. They have these silver, painted bechers. So that type of a cup maybe would fall into a whole different category than the paper cup. So it could be Rav Moshe made this responsa from Rav Moshe, I believe, is from way back in his early years, and they didn't even have the plastic cups. Were not as popular then. They had these paper cups, so there's room to be lenient. Obviously, it's nice, it's beautiful to use silver, to use something nice for a mitzvah. But if a person is stuck, it seems that there is you can rely on the other opinions that plastic would be okay. The Gemara continues here and says that so that would be the meaning of chai. Different meanings of what the word chai refers to and how to reconcile the previous Gemara that said you can't use undiluted wine, and now it's saying you should use undiluted. So the different answers to answer that question, that it could mean that you just put it into the cup undiluted, but then you dilute it afterwards, or it could mean that chai means that the cup should be chai, the cup should be complete, and it shouldn't have any blemishes, and or it could mean that it's fresh and not wine that was left around. Okay, so that was Tosfos on the previous page, who reconciles that contradiction. Now the next fourth rule about a koshel bracha is v'male. It should be complete, totally filled to the top. And itur, you should surround the cup. We'll soon see what that means. The ituf, you should cover your head when you recite the bracha. And of course, the famous question is, what do you mean? You You don't walk around with the yarmulke. And all brachas, it's usher to recite. You can't recite any bracha, not just a koshel, not just a koshel bracha, but all brachas. He says no. Here we're talking about an additional covering, like they would put on some type of a turban on top of their hat, and that's what it refers to, which is a source why some people put their hats on, hat and jacket on when they bench, based on this, or at least when they use a kais, when they bench with a mezumin at least, or use a kais, that they should have their ituf, should have this head covering.
Rabbi,
yes.
All of these statements are about the cup itself. So why would you come along in the middle of all these things that you're talking about, the cup and the wine and everything else, you start talking about a headdress?
I mean, it's part of honor for the cup. I guess it falls within the same rules. This is part of ways of honor. The cup should be complete. It should be filled to the top.
I understand that.
Be clean. It should be the person holding it should be in an honorable dress. And but it is interesting the order you're saying. You're talking in the order.
No, they're talking about the cup and the wine. They're talking about all of that, and all of a sudden you're saying that in the middle of all this definition of terms, it comes along and he says, "Oh, and by the way, the guy has to wear a hat." And then it continues from that point on. He has to take the cup with two hands, etc. To me, it doesn't flow. I think all of it deals with the cup itself and what's in the cup. And then, and I just don't see where see with the terminology, etuf, both of those deal with, they have to also deal with the cup.
Well, a good question. Anyway, the Gemara does say both of these. The Gemara mentions that the Rav Papa would put his talus on and sit and say the bracha, and Rav Asi would put something on his head, this type of a turban on his head, some honorable dress. So the Gemara seems to translate ituf to be this way. Yeah, it's a little unclear what Rav Papa means. What does Rav Papa mean with talisai? Does he mean his garment? Or, Rashi says, ma'atif betalisai. Does he mean his garment, or does he mean like a actual talus? It would seem to me it just means his garment. But I could look in the back. I have a commentary on Rashi here in the back here.
Rabbi, in Steinsaltz, it says that he would wrap himself in his prayer shawl, the talus.
He says a talus. Okay. Thanks for the Steinsaltz. Let's see what he says here. Looks like he skips this Rashi. Yep, he skips the Rashi here in the commentary. So does he have an explanation in the Steinsaltz that he actually means a talus?
No, but he just says at the end that regarding the cloth on the head, this is all as a sign of respect. So It might apply to the talus also.
Now, now when he says talus, read that again. What were the words he uses?
He says the sages had different customs with regarding to wrapping. Rav Papa would wrap himself in his prayer shawl and sit and recite the grace after meals. Rav Asi spread a cloth on his head as a sign of respect.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, the reason to translate it that way is because of course he was wearing clothing beforehand. No question. You have to wear clothes when you say a bracha. So how could you translate it mean the garment? The only thing I was thinking is that like some people have a custom to put on a jacket, before their, hat and jacket. These are like the two additions that people have. So that would have been my thought, that Rav Papa was, putting on this extra garment. But I guess it does make sense, like the Steinsaltz is saying, that it would mean his talus. And it could be that it could be either. In other words, we could fulfill this by putting on an honorable jacket as something to clothe ourselves in, garb ourselves in, and but it could be done with a talus as well. I think in some shuls, if you don't have a jacket, they make you wear a talus. I've seen such a thing, right? They tell you put something on, either a jacket or they'll put a talus on you. But this could be either or, and he maybe used his talus, but could be that it would have a similar idea. I'll tell you, this is the Gemara is it's sort of pushing me to now have to put on my hat and jacket every time I bench. I must say I wasn't used to it wasn't so strict on Shabbos. At the Shabbos meal, I put it on my hat and jacket at the benching, but it seems like this is the appropriate thing.
I don't know if anybody interpret, but in Art Scroll it just says generally and vaguely covering. That's all there is. Just a covering.
Thank you, Robert. You're a good friend of mine. Thank you for sticking up for my interpretation.
Right. Okay.
Rabbi, I'm not going to stick up for you today.
Oh, okay.
If I can say, I know that itur is like a cachet to decorate.
We didn't talk about itur.
Ituf is wrapping. Now they might talk about wrapping the glass, not the man. If you take a napkin and hold the glass because it might drip because you filled it all the way to the top, that's ituf.
So you want to follow Ezra's way of figuring out a way of interpreting it to mean that it's referring to the cup, because this way it would fit with all the other examples, and maybe you should surround the cup. Well, that's very nice, Ezra. You have a team now.
But wait a minute. There's a dissent here, because in Art Scroll it says crowning. The crowning means to the very top, to crown something.
Yeah, but I think you're on the word itur, not ituf. I think you're on a different word.
Itur is crowning, yeah.
Itur,
decorating.
Right? Oiter Yisrael Bigvura. Oiter Yisrael B'Safara. Excuse me. Oiter Yisrael B'Safara.
But it says the ituf here.
Ituf with a pay at the end.
Yeah.
And on that it says about crowning.
Crowning, yeah.
No, it says that it says covering.
The Ben Yehoyada says, "Ve'az ata yiskel leituf hu haluka derabanan." Haluka is spelled with an aleph at the end.
Haluka derabanan. What does that mean? The rabbis
maybe they disagree.
Ituf. Ituf is the rabbi's garment. It sounds like more like some type of a.
No, halukah with an aleph at the end. That's a garment.
Oh, you're asking me what it means? I would think it's the same thing. It's just a different way of spelling it.
I thought it would mean disagreement.
No. Halukah de Rabbanan. It would seem that that's just the Aramaic way of spelling it. And the Hebrew would be with a hey, and the Aramaic way would be with an aleph. But I believe that would just mean garment.
But if it's with a chet, it's dividing. It's halukah.
There are different. There's different meanings of the word halukah. Oh, we have to stop. I have the women's program. Okay, Sei gesund, everyone. It was a great discussion. We'll have to see if we can find. I'd like to look up and see. I'll look up and see if we find a source to the Ezra Ben group. And maybe we could find such an interpretation. So I'm going to look it up and try to find something. Sei gesund.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.